All right, chat. We're back. Round 4 of Modern Mondays at Guardian Games. This is our final round of the evening. We have picked 2 players that have both gone 3-0 so far tonight. Wouldn't you know it, they are both control players. Those pesky control players. Always going 3-0. It's control. People just love doing well with control. So we have Joseph Puglisi. If I'm butchering your name, I'm sorry, Joseph. On Jeskai Lotus and Will Carlisle on Esper Control. We saw Joseph in round 2 and Will in round 3. Travis, who do you think has the advantage in this controlling matchup?
All right, well, I'm going to say that this build of Esper seems like it is going to have an advantage because it's going to be hard for Joseph to push through a Blood Sun to get that engine rolling with the counter spells that are on both sides of the table, and so it's going to take a fight. And when that fight ends, I bet Will is going to be able to play out like a Teferi and bounce it, and then Will has just a bit lower of a curve plus the Snapcaster counter spell that it's going to be easier for Will to sort of like control the early game. And then I don't think Joseph's going to be able to get his double cryptic turns in as easily as most matchups. That said, I think it might be close, but I'm going to put the slight advantage to Will, like maybe 60-40 or something.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of feel like it'll play out similar to how when somebody goes like just one step above another deck. So I feel like the Lotus field deck is kind of going one step above the other controlling style deck. So I'm expecting that Joseph will be able to outvalue what Will has going on, because I think it's going to take too long for Will to close the game to really gain any sort of real advantage.
Oh, seems like time for a friendly wager. But I don't want to bet against one of our players because they both seem like really cool people.
Yeah.
I do think that the Lotus control deck goes over the top of other non-control decks, but it really depends on resolving some key spells, not just making your land drops. So it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a fun match to see. I hope they actually get to finish the match.
Yeah. Yes. Always a concern in the control mirrors.
All right, so the control matchup has done the thing that they do, where they play lands and pass.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Looks like we're going to get an ice here, which I like.
Yeah, that's kind of what I don't like, not paying the 2 life for Watery Grave. It's pretty free in this matchup, and now you're opening up your opponent to be able to resolve a 3-mana spell. So if we have a Blood Sun, which we don't, and it's a little bit less punishing because the Lotus control deck doesn't play 3-mana Teferi, which that can be that's a major game changer in the matchup.
So interesting. So Joseph may have had an opportunity to resolve Valakut Awakening, but maybe wanting to represent some interaction here. So now with Valakut Awakening being on the stack, because Joseph's hand is super clunky right now, but of course Will doesn't really know that.
No, you don't have to. I'm just asking. Does it resolve?
It looks like both players are pretty light on counter spells. I don't know if Will has anything in hand either. It looks like a Snap, Teferi, Kaya's Guile, 2 more
Tainted Indulgence.
Tainted Indulgence, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So he might be casting Tainted Indulgence to try to dig for a counter.
That does look like that's the play.
Yeah.
Oh, just going to let it resolve.
I do love this. I love the funny stand-downs that control mirrors have, where you both think the other person has the thing, and then neither person has the thing. So it looks like Joseph kept 2 cards. I'm guessing one was a big Teferi. I don't know what the other one was.
Looks like Big Teferi and a Memory Deluge.
Okay.
seems reasonable. Did not draw into a Blood Sun, so now we see, does Joseph want to just play out the Lotus field, which isn't too bad here. You end up losing the flagstones, but you're getting a decent amount of value out of that. I think it's a reasonable play. I think resolving a Blood Sun, given that you don't even have one right now, I think that's a little ambitious, and making the land drop here seems worth it to me. But you do kind of open up, you open things up for Will to resolve an impactful spell on their turn.
Which there is an impactful spell in Will's hand. Looks like we've got Teferi hanging out over there, and
Papa.
Yeah. And we're gonna have the mana to cast it, so probably just like using mana efficiently here with this indulgence. Do you care about the basic planes? Probably not.
I think that Indulgence is a really interesting card in this deck. It does feel like you're not going to get to the 5 types required to make it a draw to that commonly. I don't know how I feel about it in a deck that's not like actively trying to utilize graveyard synergy.
Unless there may be something that I'm missing in terms of mana values and construction of the deck. Like maybe it's supposed to curve out in a certain way, but I'm on your side with this, where it depends how I have no idea how many. Maybe it's like a one of that we've just seen a few times, but I'd like something, even like Think Twice seems like maybe a better card. And Think Twice isn't a very good card.
Yeah,
yeah. It's one of those,
I hesitate to agree with you on that specific, but yeah, I do think another card could be valuable.
It may be just a curve consideration for like wanting something
Sure.
other than Counterspell to or Fire Ice to do unto.
Yeah.
Tap for 7. Yeah. March of Otherworldly Light, the 1 coil engine. Can I read that card? Yeah. Exile target artifact.
So I think this is where we see. Big Teferi making an entrance.
I'm going to go to combat and hit you for 3 with results.
And
Get it down before Cryptic's up.
yeah, Joseph doesn't have anything to say about this.
It has been really interesting to see, like, Force of Negation being a card that was played in Control for a significant amount of time, that now has kind of been pushed out to almost exclusively being played in Cascade combo decks. Sometimes it's like a one of in a sideboard of Murktide, but it's all the pitch elementals have kind of supplanted Force of Negation as a free spell, where in Control Mirrors, Force of Negation is better than most pitch elementals for sure.
Agreed.
Oh my gosh, this is just so much mana advantage, and hitting the counterspell off the Teferi draw.
Huge.
That was like
Absolutely enormous. Yeah. This is the point where you could absolutely see the kind of lower to the ground nature, if you want to call it that, of Will's deck could end up burying what Joseph has.
Sure.
But, Joseph's deck has a lot of value between Memory Deluges and Cryptics. Will's going to have an answer at every turn here, and it's going to Will's going to have an answer for a while, too.
Yeah, Joseph doesn't play Counterspell, so that's like, you need, with Will playing Counterspell, Archmage's Charm, and Snapcaster, like Will is able to scale up the counter battle pretty efficiently when a Blood Sun's not out, where Joseph's double spell turns are going to be like a 5 mana spell backed up by a Cryptic command, so like 9 mana, where I don't think a traditional control deck is going to have a problem winning those fights.
Yeah, I think missing the draw into Blood Sun was a pretty critical moment when the Valakut Awakening resolved and a Blood Sun was not hit. Because now Teferi is getting close to ultimate range. Is it? It's a minus. It's a -8. Am I? Is it -8 or -7 for Big Teferi?
We're bouncing Teferi and drawing a card. It's going to be a -8 there, Ian.
Okay.
Also, it helped that you mulliganed to 5. Yeah. That was a massive help. Counter draw.
So this is like the point I was making of why I think I favored Will, is we're going to be able to get a Snapcaster counterspell right now.
Snapcaster. You have enough mana to counterspell. Yep, you got it. Okay.
Which I think is good. And Joseph's gonna go. We're gonna go to game 2. The important thing that I think Joseph gets in this post sideboard games is Joseph should have 4 Force of Negations available to bring in.
4?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah, if we're playing a
Yeah,
normal
yeah.
version of the deck, there
Okay.
should be 4.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've looked at these deck lists, but that was I guess you really do need that, because lacking counterspell, your ability to play like the game of like in a stack for resolving it is pretty bad. So
It is pretty
Yeah.
bad. The other thing you can get rid of is you can get rid of your Solitudes, which are also pretty bad in the matchup. So I would hope to see Joseph. Furies are actually still pretty good.
I think March is worse than Solitude.
I mean, I think Solitude's really bad.
I mean, March doesn't.
I'd like
kill-
to see Solitude
Yeah.
being out.
I mean, March doesn't kill planeswalkers. So what is it killing on Will's side? Like, kind of nothing. Like, I don't think chalices are going to be a concern of yours. So I could see like taking out verdicts and marches. And I mean, Solitude sucks, but it's still a flash threat, and having a flash threat is like.
Yeah, I'm a little I mean, I'm seeing. It looks like Joseph took out Furies, and that it makes me nervous.
I would take out Solitudes before Furies, but I would take out Marches and Verdicts before either of those cards.
Yes, I'm with you on. I think I'm definitely with you on taking out the Verdict.
What are you keeping March in for?
Um,
Soul searching.
There's some thinking here.
sorry, I want to reread. Dang it.
Yeah. It's I feel like these
That's bad. I'm not supposed to be doing
sometimes control mirrors. I mean, for a control mirror, these are pretty different decks, but control mirrors can be really challenging to decide what you want to sideboard, because a lot of times you want to bring in more cards than you want to take out.
Yeah, I'd take out Marches. I think I would. Yeah, I mean, I think I would take out. Yeah, probably Marches first, which my guess is there's like 2 of those maybe. Marches, and then I would take out Solitudes. Or I guess, sorry, yeah, Verdict, March, Solitude.
Yeah, which I think you're just going to probably end up taking out Verdict and March at that point, because they don't know what else you're bringing in. But
None of them are modern cards, so I don't know. Exactly. It could be.
but I don't think that's what the decision Joseph made, so it'll be interesting
No.
to see. I think I saw Sapphire Ice head out, which I think when you want to resolve a 3-mana spell and you're on the play, Fire Ice is really good. It's maybe less good when you're on the draw, but I think it's pretty strong in control mirrors.
Yeah, it's hard for it to be to hit a situation where Fire Ice is like dead, right? Because like at its worst, you're, tapping down one of your opponent's lands and giving yourself a little bit better of a position to resolve something important the turn afterwards.
And we have maybe one of the worst lands to start off. I guess Flagstone's probably the worst land, but it's always awkward. I feel like I really like Joseph's deck, but when you don't have the Lotus Field Blood Sun thing going on, for a blue-based control deck, you're playing a lot of non-blue lands.
Yeah.
Playing fetch lands too. Avoid shuffle. Yeah. Oh, come on. It's like the biggest upside of this deck.
Yeah, the mana base can be tough, but it looks like it's not. It hasn't been too bad so far.
It's always nice when the hall comes in.
It's always interesting too that they're to see a deck in Modern that doesn't play fetch lands. It looks like we do have the Lotus Field, and we're just playing it.
Hmm.
I think it's because I think Joseph wants to have Cryptic next turn, and we have a Force of Negation to protect against a Teferi 3 for this turn. I have a feeling that Joseph might. So I've made this. I'm saying this as someone who has made this mistake. When March first came out, I was like, "Oh, this is a slightly different prismatic ending with a different cost." And so there's considerations there. I did not realize it couldn't kill planeswalkers. You know, read the cards. That's a mantra, right? But sometimes we don't. And oh man, that was a bad realization post board one game.
Yeah.
So you just top decked into more
Yeah, it does. It does look bad. All right. So, I mean, this is the spot where this Jeskai Lotus deck can start to get ahead, as it's playing 4 Memory Deluge. I would like to see Will fire off the Force of Negation here, honestly, to get that Memory Deluge out of there. But it looks like it's just going to be the Archmage's Charm. And this is not where you want to be in the control mirror. Is unable to make a land drop. There is another Deluge in hand. So I imagine we are going to see Joseph fire off the Deluge on end step again. And this
Oh
puts
my
Will to the
gosh.
test. Do we see the Force of Negation?
I think so, because Force of Negation plus icing next turn, Joseph.
You can't ice the Lotus Field.
But you can ice the steam vents if Joseph misses another land drop,
Yeah.
and then pretty much feel safe to resolve a planeswalker. We know Joseph has a Force of Negation in hand. Will doesn't know that, but yeah.
Yeah. So we do see the Force of Negation fired off
Oh,
here.
that's
That
the
is
worst plan to draw.
a bad draw. We get the pass here. I mean, if I'm Will, I'm not going to be the one to play the first spell. Like, I'm making my land drops, and my opponent is not.
I maybe I'll play a spell when I can play a payoff card and have a counter spell backup. If I'm Will, that's
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I feel like I'm still content to just wait.
oh, we get the Scry too with Castle Vantress. Okay, both of these are great cards.
Yes. Yes, they are. Yeah, I mean, if you're wanting to test the waters, Baby Teferi seems to be a good way to test the waters. But the thing is, Will's a little light on counter magic at this point.
Yeah, I kind of like Snapcaster on top, so you can either Snapcaster Force on Joseph's turn or Snapcaster Archmage's Charm on Joseph's turn.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like we kept Little Teferi on top. We do have Dovin's Veto. Will's sitting on a Dovin's Veto. 2 big Teferis, a little Teferi, Fire Ice, and Tainted Indulgence.
What's 10 indulgence?
That seems slightly risky to me there.
Yeah, the main phase indulgence. It's an interesting call here.
Right?
So we're gonna see Joseph play the Awakening as the land. Possible that could have been leveraged on Will's turn, but I get it. You know, the guaranteed land drop feels pretty good right now.
Pastor?
So now we're at that awkward spot with Joseph where we have 8 cards in hand. So again, if I'm Will and my opponent's essentially being forced to go to discard, I'm just gonna keep trying to make land drops. Like, I'm not playing cards here.
You know what? I would totally play cards. I would ice Snapcaster Ice. Unless Joseph plays something, because then I know I can resolve it to Teferi with the Dovin's Veto up.
We will go to the end step.
Oh, God. The end step.
Unfairy?
So I believe Joseph had the option of playing a Lotus Field there and getting rid of the other 2 lands,
Not catching me, but
but went to discard instead. We haven't really seen, like, Joseph hasn't really been able to leverage the power of the Lotus Field in the deck in either of the games we've seen so far. You know, the first turn Lotus Field was a slightly better land in that the Flagstones was available, but yeah, at the moment, it's looking like a
You were a little out of sequence there. You're not supposed to, like, once you go to clean up, your opponent can't do anything. But I feel like Joseph sort of pushed that through verbally a little quickly. So Will was like, hold on, I want to do something first. I think Joseph is leaning on really hoping he gets to cryptic something and then Force of Negation the follow up.
Look out, I'm blinking.
So,
Very.
man, that's why
Counter.
I really liked icing at the end of turn. Because I think if you ice both those lands, there's no way, unless your opponent like double Force of Negations, which I'd consider a win anyways, you don't get this Teferi through with the Dovin's Veto up. At this point, you do lose to Force of Negation and open up Joseph to be able to resolve a spell.
Cards name after that?
I think that's maybe the first sort of like what I would consider a suboptimal play by Will that I've seen in the matches and games that we've seen him play.
it's just such a rough spot for Joseph. I mean, you're really seeing these solitudes just looking so mopey.
I know, because if you had the like, if Joseph was able to hold on to that Teferi, like that, like you would be in a really good position now, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe not winning for sure, but yeah. Oh, that's so rough.
Baby Teferi. Solitude.
And you know that like after you've played 2 Lotus Fields is absolutely the time when you like draw into the Blood Sun.
Aw.
It looks like we had a Fury.
I mean,
I mean, you're casting it.
Spinning sees another Urza.
Like, yeah, you're casting it if you're Joseph, but you don't really feel great about it. Oh,
Playing the solitude.
interesting.
Yeah, solitude.
I mean, Will just it's a solid grip of cards at this point. There's Big Teferi again. And Joseph staring into that abyss. Staring into the abyss of young Teferi and old Teferi.
Go up here. And
I've seen some things.
yep, 2 up.
Yeah.
Rips their own Teferi off the top. I mean, I think you got to go for Fury here. Just think, if that Solitude were another Fury, you could pitch cast the Fury to try and clear the way and maybe draw out the counterspell, and then you could actually cast the big Teferi and maybe get yourself back into this game because your top decks are going to be a little stronger than what Will has going on. But as it stands, you're still constricted to casting a single spell a turn.
Or if there was another blue spell instead of having to ditch the Teferi that Force of Negation turn.
Sure, yeah.
Like that's, but yeah, like March is doing like literally nothing. And
Yeah.
hand.
I mean, both March and Solitude. Yeah.
I mean, Solitude has done more than March. It threatened a Teferi, so it had to minus.
You mean the baby Teferi had to bounce something to draw a card?
No, it doesn't have to. It's a May. You can not bounce anything. No, but I mean, I think if you would have plussed it if you didn't want to protect it, just because Will has.
This is what I've been doing. Oh my
So
God.
it's weird. We're yeah.
For the first time.
We are seeing a lot of the tainted indulgence.
Tainted
It seems to
Indulgence
be
for the
like
first
kind
time
of a.
live, just a straight divination. Oh boy.
Oh wow, we did it. I guess that's why the Fire Ice is there. Okay, this is making sense. The Tainted Indulgence, then having Fire Ice in the deck makes the diversity of
Wait,
mana.
how are there 5 different CMCs in the yard?
We have 0, 1, 2,
3, 4.
5.
Where's the
and
5?
Fire Ice.
Fire Ice is 4,
Oh,
buddy.
4, right. So 0, 1, 2, 3,
4?
4.
Oh, yeah.
Is that
Okay.
how?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. All right.
Normally I wouldn't leave the flood strand up there. That's why the trigger.
Ha ha ha. I don't think
Yeah.
anything's result. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and Joseph sees the writing on the wall. This one is Will's for the taken. Interesting.
Took out the Furies, took out Verdict, took out 1 March. Let's see. Then brought on the 4 Forces. Okay.
Ooh, the foil forces too. So you brought them. Yeah.
I like those. Those forces look very cool.
Yeah, they're awesome forces. Yeah, definitely rough for Joseph to not see a single Blood Sun in 2 matches. That is going to make it tougher.
Is kind of somewhat how I expected the match to play out, though.
Yeah. I really do feel like Joseph had below average draws, and I think had the sideboarding gone a little bit differently, could have swung it. But
Well,
in
that was
any
cool.
case,
We've been gone for a while. If folks are tuning in now, we stream every Monday usually, but we had a bout of COVID, and we were out for a month. Both Ian and then myself. Ian never actually got it. He kind of like fake got it, thought he had it, didn't have it. I for real got it, and I felt like absolute shit. But we're back. We're actually it's funny. We have a vacation. Ian and I are going rafting next Monday, and if we survive, which I know that Ian's wife is hoping we will survive, and we'll have a
Toilet paper will return.
Vincenzo Balistreri, our resident SCG champion, joining us on our rafting trip. So that would be a chunk of Portland Magic character to lose on one trip if we don't come back. But so we'll be out next Monday, but we'll return, and we're going to keep doing this for the rest of the summer. We super appreciate folks hanging out and chat. We appreciate all of our longtime subscribers and people sticking through the thick and thin. Dead Drift hanging in there, being one of our very first and lasting 2.5 years. And it's been super fun. Thanks everyone for hanging out. And we're going to leave you with our theme tune. But we're Portland Paper at Modern Mondays at Guardian Games here almost every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah, it was just fetches.
And let's see, we're gonna throw a good raid on. Who are we gonna raid?
PT Bench.
That's always
Oh.
good.
Flood strands. The more
Yeah,
the
you
merrier.
kind of got not the mirror, but you got 2 controls.
Yeah. 50% would
You know what I'm proud to say? I didn't go to time once.
There you go.
It almost happened.